I like to say, like, again, like, it is such a treat coming back to Swea City. I mean, it's been like, what, maybe more than like 20 years since I've last been here, and where my folks first pastored. Yeah, we're like 20, 21 years, and I am just enamored. I'm also, hearing the message of just you sending out the youth and being able to cover all their costs. I am completely on board with Pastor Peter here. It is such an experience for youth to be able to go out for a week, to disconnect, to get away from just the busyness of the world, especially nowadays where the phone is like instantly in the pocket, a distraction every single moment. And it is a way to disconnect, to be able to get back into tune. Excuse me, what's this? All right, sorry about that. It is an experience to be able to get disconnected, and to be able to get back into relationships, make relationships, connections with one another, and to really find their center with God once again. And on that, I'm just kudos to you guys. I am proud to hear about that. That is amazing. Unfortunately, I won't be able to go to camp this year. I had to spend my time off from work to be able to go to convention, and all of my guys back at my church are like, wait, you're not going to camp this year? I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't make it this time, which like the first time. I know, it is awful. But, well, thank you again for letting me, Pastor Peter and Cheyenne, for bringing me here, and allowing me to connect and reconnect with all of you here at Swea City Open Bible. It is amazing. So I guess I'll just give a little bit of background information about myself, just to kind of cue you all in who I am. For like where it started for me, it was all at Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I was born a Midwestern, but it wasn't until after a few months my parents were about to embark on a journey of their own, packing up everything and leaving for the Pacific West state of Oregon. There, my dad was called to pursue a bachelor's degree at Eugene Bible College, which is known now as New Hope Christian College, a chance at learning in depth about the Bible and being a minister. As for myself, I spent most of my years growing up around the apartment complexes, playing in playgrounds, rolling on roller skates, and maybe some trouble. My mom wasn't looking. I remember the many nights my mom would let my older brother and I stay up, so when Dad got home, a man who had gone to school and work right after a full-time job, just to come home and have two rowdy boys wanting to wrestle on the living room floor. Which brings us right back to Swea City. When my dad had graduated after 4 years, it wasn't long until my family and I and my older brother, we all packed up and came out here to the Open Bible Church of Swea City. And here's where my dad ministered for about 4 or 5 years, give or take. And for myself, it was the first time experiencing living in a smaller town compared to Eugene, Oregon. At a certain point growing up, I could tell you just the stories that I had just growing up inside this small town, too many to count. And I remember like every day getting up out of bed, doing my homework as a homeschooler, getting that done, and then rushing out to go meet with my friends. We'd bike around all around town, and also like the summer pastime, just having a clear shot straight to where the pool is. And I could say like on record, that's probably the last time I've ever had an actual tan. And boy, it was something I wasn't used to, but I was able to like actually go around and like connect with people, connect with friends that way. We stayed until my dad was led to continue his education by enrolling into the University of Dubuque, studying for his master's in divinity. This is where we all moved. We were moved all the way back, full circle, back to Cedar Rapids. And most of my family lived there, and it was a nice change being able to see them more often. Here we attended the First Church of the Open Bible, and I began to understand this is where in my time of my life, and like versus like when I was here, I was pretty young at the time. During that time at First Church of the Open Bible in Cedar Rapids, that's when my mind really started to kick into gear about what my faith meant, and it wasn't apart from my parents and what it meant for myself. And I was really thankful through that whole time being in Cedar Rapids that I was able to make some really good friends along the way, especially through the church. And that was kind of like my tight knit of friends. That was the group of guys that I was able to, because I was homeschooled. I didn't have friends at schools, but when I went to church, pretty much almost every other day, because we live like right across the street from it, those are the friends that help kind of keep me grounded on the path of the Lord, and I owe so much to them. But like during that time, self-discovery, that's when I found my love for music for worship, and it became an integral part of like how I just love worship and ministry through it. It is, and through that, my friends and I sort of collaborated together. We made like this makeshift band. Eventually, it kind of turned into something a little more open. We used to be called the Receiving the Prize. But we used to use that as a connection to be able to get around town in Cedar Rapids, to be able to talk, to be able to connect with people, be able to fill in for worship nights. And I think there was like a couple times we went out of state, which was awesome. But no, like being able to experience worship and to be able to experience God through it really changed my life. And through this band that we had put together, opened up a special opportunity with a couple missionaries that were there at First Church. They were planning a missions trip all the way out to England, of all places. That was like my first steps into missions, was across the Atlantic. And I tell you, it was a whole different, it was a different experience in the respects between the Western and just going further out east. It completely changed my perspective as a whole, seeing people firsthand outside my own country, sharing the gospel with one another, and how it was lived inside of another culture. So it isn't short to say that the missions field had really changed my life. It broadened my perspective to the world abroad, and suddenly I realized there was more than just happening than just the United States. I mean, to be honest with ourselves, it's kind of how we are. We get kind of stuck inside of our own bubbles. Like, you know, the U.S. is like ground central for like the Bible, for Christianity, and we get into our process of day-to-day life, but we don't see too much of what's happening just outside of our borders. There's so much marvelous stuff that is happening just out on the other side of the sea, or just out down south. I was fortunate to spend some time at Puente de Amistad in Tijuana, Mexico, during a spring break in college, followed by an internship that I had with Mike and Pam Lombard at Trinidad and Tobago. First, each time I saw God at work, and not specifically with the Western tradition, but in tandem with the culture that was there. There was always differences I found pertaining to how I experienced growing up in the church, and these moments to serve abroad only opened my eyes to new perspectives that led back to Christ. Eventually, I had graduated, so coming back to Cedar Rapids, at a certain point, I moved all the way back to the same state, back to Oregon, where I went back to the same college that my dad went to as well. There, my folks also ministered at a church where my dad pastored a church, open Bible church, for about 8 years or so, and I worked as the worship leader there for about 8 years. And I tell you, it's like coming here. It's just like the same experience, just a tight-knit group of people who are all together. You know, it was a huge experience during my time being able to learn how to become a worship leader in just those 8 years alone. When I had graduated from New Hope Christian College, I went with an emphasis in cross-cultural studies. Excuse me. Glad I brought that. All right, where was I? Oh, yes. Cross-cultural studies. I spent the next 4 years working as hard as I could on my student loans and Thanks be to God, I'm now debt-free and ready to keep going. Currently, I serve at Experience Church in Des Moines with the youth and on the worship team. And most of my ministry background has been a worship leader, followed by youth ministry. But my heart has always had a place for missions, although I questioned for years what it would look like for myself. Like one of the things I remember being in college, because, man, I witnessed other students that were there that were talking about, oh yeah, I want to go to Ireland, I want to go to Scotland, I want to go to these places, and every time the answer came up to my head, I wanted to know what God was placing on my heart, but I couldn't help but to find out what it was. And so throughout that whole time, from graduation on out till today, out till like about 2.5 years ago, I kept praying and praying until I felt an inclination, a final urge that came upon my heart, and it was it was leading and guiding in towards a direction out towards further west on the other side of the Pacific, out to Japan. Now, I wasn't sure what I was to do with the thought of ministry in Japan at first glance. Between the culture, its people, the language, I was certainly out of my depth. Best I knew was from media and shows I watched, but I had no idea what it was like actually there. So over time, I did some digging, looking a bit into its history as a nation pertaining to Christianity, and I was surprised at what I found. And I won't be able to elaborate on everything, but I'll summarize a bit of it for you. Way back in 1549, there were at least 3 Jesuit missionaries that first began to spread Christianity in Japan. Although there was a language barrier and suspicions from the Japanese leaders, they went there preaching and baptizing the people and converted thousands of followers with the gospel. The number of converts continued until a head warlord issued an anti-Christian edict, resulting in a widespread persecution and ultimately led to the remaining native Christians to go into hiding. However, the legacy left by those missionaries has forever laid the foundation for Japan's current Christian population, which continues on sharing the gospel. The nation has long abandoned its ban on Christianity, and now people are free to believe what they want. But fast forward all the way to today, it's a different landscape now. This is the next part that really caught me off guard. For the most recent record, the population of professing Japanese Christians that are currently in Japan measures to roughly about 1.5 million. Now, that looks like it'd be quite a lot, at face value, 1.5 Christians. Wow, that's really something. But when you look into it, in comparison to Japan's total population of 122 to 123 million, that makes up only about 1 to 2%. That's crazy. For a first world country, it's like what our worship leader shared today. It's a first world country, but it's the second least reached nation in the world. And so I wondered, why are there so few Christians in Japan today? And I mean, and diving into that, there's a multitude of reasons that could maybe be the answer to this question. One of the things that I felt that I could surmise was a unique proverb that encompasses most others. There's a Japanese proverb known as deru kuki wa ataraeru, which translates to the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. This describes the conformity in Japan that most, if not all, of its people follow. Individuality is not something commonly sought out for and can be faced with criticism or resistance from the general public. It's a unique cultural quality that emphasizes harmony and group cohesion over individuality, pursuing peace and the avoidance of conflict. Japan is a very peaceful and safe in contrast to many nations around the world. They prioritize efficiency and accessibility when they can. They take so much care into their craft and aspire for perfection. It is truly something to witness from just outside looking in. However, I can see where it can prove to be difficult for anyone to consider Christianity in light of the social pressures. For some, it may be hard for one to follow Christ when their family are lifelong followers of Shinto or Buddhism, the native religions there. For others, religion is something to never be considered in fear of being misled or brainwashed. For native Christians, it has been shown to be hard in breaking through with the gospel to others due to how obscure it is in the general public eye. 1%. Christianity is the minority inside Japan. And when that's being presented out to just from one Japanese to another, it's considered probably something taboo or something occultic, and they don't want anything of it. There's an old story back in 2000, around 2005. There was a terrorist attack inside Japan called the Syrian gas attack. It resulted in the lives of thousands of Japanese, led by a cult. And from them point out, many Japanese from that point out had started considering religion as sort of just religion in general as something occultic and something to be really afraid of. Didn't do any respects or anything good as far as in trying to find more people that we can reach out to Christ. And you might be surprised to also know that in Japan, there is hardly anyone within the general public that has ever heard remotely of anything of the gospel. I'm talking like nothing. Maybe in their school they probably had some material that came across to them, maybe like a snippet of Jesus, maybe something about the Bible, but absolutely nothing. They have no idea about the Father, about salvation, about redemption, and eternal life. Knowing this with the knowledge of some of the current issues that Japanese face today is what had gripped my heart in the first place. The Japanese are a hard-working people, yet many are left dissatisfied and hopeless in the midst of life. The nation has endured a stagnant economy ever since it crashed in the late 1980s. There was a massive bubble that burst back in the 1980s, and ever since, the yen has been on the rapid decline, and it hasn't proved anything good for as far as jobs. Men and women are working long hours with low wages, with hardly any time to recoup or time for family. And maybe most of you might already know, maybe based by word of mouth that's been passed around, is the population crisis. Its birth rates becoming staggeringly low. Some Japanese have even completely withdrawn from society. There is an ongoing growing phenomenon right now that the nation is experiencing called hikikomori. People who have lost any hope of adapting to society and isolate themselves in their homes. And in more extreme cases, many have gone to the lengths of ending their own lives. But despite all this, we know as believers that there is still hope, that there is hope found in Jesus Christ. No matter the circumstances, pressures, or failures, God rises above them all and over them all. He is constant, unwavering, and a bulwark that we can confidently put our trust in. And I see that for the nation of Japan. There are many ministers there now, whether native or missionary, that are praying for a rise in laborers or workers in Japan. Going back to Matthew chapter 9, verse 36 to 38, I'll just read it really quick. This is Christ, when he was out there speaking to large crowd of people. Seeing the people, he felt compassion for them because they were distressed and dispirited like sheep without a shepherd. And then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Therefore, beseech the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest." There is a deep spiritual need within Japan, and a hunger and a longing that only God can satisfy, and yet so many have never heard of him. In prayer, the Spirit had gripped my heart for these people. I may not know everything there is about Japan, between its culture, rules, and language, and especially the language. Yet I'm still going to try what I can do, not by my will, but by His will. I wish I could say I've been confident in every step leading up to this opportunity, but I wouldn't have if I was completely honest with you. Yet there is a clear truth for all of us when we are faced with something we feel outside of our depth. This is an encouragement not only for me, but for all of us that are considering ministry, wherever it might be. If you feel like you're outside of your depth, listen to this. God does not typically look for the most qualified, the most adept, or the most efficient. God searches for those who are obedient, willing, and available. In Exodus chapter 3, verse 10 through 12, this is when God called Moses. When He called Moses, Moses was quick to label out all of his inadequacies, yet God had given him what he needed to lead the Israelites from Egypt. In Judges, when God called Gideon a simple farmer, He made him into a warrior that led Israel out from the Midianites' oppression. In 1 Samuel, when God called out to Samuel in the middle of the night, he regarded the advice of Eli and answered God, in time becoming a great prophet. And in Jeremiah, when God had called to the prophet Jeremiah said he was too young and inexperienced. Yet God reassured him that He would be with him and He would give him the words to speak. I don't hold myself in any higher regard as far as in going to Japan, but when God has a calling, when God has a mission on one's heart, you can't help but press in and go after it. And no matter where any of us are in life, when God has placed a calling in our heart, He's just looking for us to be open, to be available. It's something that I've had to learn time and time again throughout my own life. Especially some of you young guys out there. I just know that God, you have these dreams and that you want to aspire to, or maybe you don't even know what you want to do. But as long as you keep calling out to the Father, as long as you keep pressing into Him what is next or what is to come, or when He lays something on your heart, follow into it. Don't hesitate and keep moving forward. Put one foot forward in front of the next, and He will lead you into exactly where you want to be. Whether if it's here in the nation or outside the borders, wherever it may be, He will use you, and you will be effective where He has called you to be. No matter where you come from, what you think of yourself, or how experienced you are, God desires above all a heart that is willing to be available to His call, to rise to the occasion when His Spirit burdens us, and a willingness to follow through. Know that God is calling you and that He has chosen you for such a time and will give you what you need to accomplish it. I had the opportunity last December to be able to go and share my heart with a local Open Bible church that was out in southern Tokyo. They go by the name of McKendre Bible Church, or Trinity Square, and there's a whole network, tight-knit community of Open Bible churches that surround there in the southern part. If you might have the photos available, no, yes, do we have the slides? Oh, okay, that's all right. But I had the opportunity last December to be able to go visit with our brothers and sisters out there, and I tell you, it was an experience. I don't think I've ever been hosted that well in my life, which was they were so excited to be able to show me their English teaching program, which Pastor Saki leads. Also the lead pastors there at Trinity Square are Pastor Saki and Utica, and they're both passionate people for the gospel. They lead an English teaching program that's out there that's supposed to, in way also teaches English, but it's also to help evangelize to the surrounding community, to help bring in people through the door. Because just from like 2020 up to 2025, there has been a massive surge within Japan to learn English. And it is an ample opportunity to be able to use it as an opportunity, not only to teach English, but to help be able to invite God into their lives. They have a stable and growing youth in elementary that is there, and I had the opportunity to be able to go up on stage to be able to share my heart and mission for Japan, as well as to be able to be part of their own worship team. And I tell you, they are stoked for people to come from the West to visit Japan and to come and to share their hearts. It was amazing to see how thrilled they were at just me coming, and now for this upcoming, hopefully in October or November, I hope to be able to go for about 6 months, and I will be plugged in and engaged with their youth as well as their English teaching program, and on top of that with their worship team, and also as a speaker. And hopefully, if anything else, that I'd be able to reach out to the surrounding communities and other open Bible churches. I was able to have an opportunity to be able to sit down with their surrounding leaders, and one of the things that they said that they were asking for the most right now, as far as in prayer, is new leaders to rise up. There are many aging pastors there that are, well, you can't do it forever. And they're calling out and calling for new workers to rise up. One of them that I found through the church that I was serving was Pastor Shion. Guy has a heart for worship. God has a heart for just the local community, and to see him step up and to help Pastor Saki and Utica in every inch and faucet. The guy is incredible. I'm really stoked and excited to see for where God has got the nation of Japan in the next following years, because I feel like there's something coming up along the horizon. Ever since COVID happened, there's been so much isolation and depression that has been rising, not only here in the West, but especially there in Japan. And people are hungry, spiritually hungry for the gospel, whether they know it or not. They're longing for purpose. They're longing for a destination. They're looking for something higher than just the everyday work-related. With everything that has been said, first of all, I want to really thank you, Pastor Peter and Cheyenne, where she may ever be. And I want to thank personally every single one of you here, and just inviting me to come and to be able to share my heart and for what's to come up in these upcoming months. I'm really excited to see for where God is going to take this next step into this foreign land, and to see where God is going to just explode. There, like I said, there are many people. There are quite a few missionaries that are already there, Christians that are praying for workers to rise up. And I tell you, it's going to be a group effort to be able to push. Even if it's just from 1% to 2%, that is a milestone. So with that being said, thank you so much for having me, and pray and continue to pray for these upcoming months.
Thank you so much, McKendre, for sharing with us. It was an excellent word. Thank you for sharing your heart for the people of Japan. So what are some ways that we as a church body can best support you? All right. And if you feel so inclined as to give financially, I believe we're just handling that through Open Bible Missions, but they can. But if you wanted to go to McKendre specifically, you would want to note that on any giving that you make. So we definitely want to continue to support him financially, but also, yes, absolutely continue to pray for the people of Japan. Continue to pray for McKendre as he's getting ready to go into the mission field. So before we wrap up, I do want to pray over McKendre, and I would actually like to invite anyone who feels so inclined. Let's gather around him. Let's lay hands on him and pray for him as he's getting ready to go into the mission field. So anyone who feels comfortable, I would ask that you come up so that we can pray over him.